So now, I'm proud to say, my goodness, today is Wednesday. 3 weeks from yesterday, we're voting in California, November the 2nd, on Proposition 19. Proposition 19 is an initiative to treat marijuana like alcohol for adults in the state of California. I think it's probably one of the most important elections in my lifetime. This will be the beginning of the end of marijuana prohibition. If it passes in California, California leads the country in a lot of things, and as I say, some of them are good. But it will sweep the country. It's going to work. What would happen? Just think with me for a moment. What would happen in California or Missouri or anywhere else that you would pass legislation to treat marijuana like alcohol for adults? I have 6 things that would happen. The first 5 demonstrably beneficial almost immediately, then we'll talk about the 6th. The first thing that happens is in California, we as taxpayers would literally save hundreds of millions, if not $1 billion, that every year we spend of our tax money in a futile effort to eradicate marijuana as well as prosecute and incarcerate nonviolent marijuana offenders, sellers, or otherwise. That's hundreds of millions of dollars that now we are spending that we would no longer have to spend, we could keep. And by the way, you know how successful we are in this eradication? Once again, it's still the largest cash crop in our state. So that is lots of money that we can save. Number 2, we can tax the silly stuff, generate revenue of more, hundreds of millions of dollars. In this case, mostly of the cities, although anybody that would be involved on low-bid contract by manufacturing, growing marijuana, manufacturing, packaging it, would then be spending, would actually be paying income taxes on that property, and the state would make some money too. So this is at least $1 billion to $1.5 billion that would change their budget deficits, either in the states, the counties, or the state. I think that's worth doing, but that's only a side benefit, because the major benefit would be, number 3, it would make marijuana less available for children than it is today. Now, most of you are a lot closer to being under 21 than I am, although I was actually under 21 for quite a few years in my life, believe it or not. But let me ask you, if you were under 21, or when you were under 21, what was harder for you to get, alcohol or marijuana, if you wanted to? If you wanted to, how many of you believe it was easier, I'll change the question, easier to get marijuana than alcohol? Why? Somebody's read my book. Stealing my thunder. You're right. The alcohol is regulated and controlled by the government, and the illegal marijuana is controlled by illegal marijuana dealers, and they don't ask for ID. And that's just straightforward. Ask young people under 21, that's what they'll tell you. If they want to get the marijuana, they can. They know where to go to get it. For heaven's sake, let's stop in this area and so many more. Let's stop moralizing about these issues and start managing them. You know, there's never been a society in the history of mankind that has not had some form of mind-altering, sometimes addicting substance to use, to misuse, to abuse, or even get addicted to, except maybe the Eskimos, because they couldn't grow anything. But now chemistry and transportation has changed that as well. So let's just get real. Let's recognize this fact, and it is a fact. The drugs are here to stay. In a lot of ways, I suppose I'm sorry. Put that aside. The drugs are here to stay. And if you don't believe that, you all know who Charles Manson is. Charles Manson was moved from Corcoran State Prison in California numbers of years ago now, because he was found to be selling illegal drugs from his prison cell, and he was in solitary confinement. So if he can get drugs in prison, if we can't keep drugs out of prison, and we can't, how in heaven's name do you expect to keep them off the streets of Joplin here or any other town or city in our country? So let's just recognize that. It's easier for our young people to get marijuana or any other drug if they want to than alcohol. We couldn't do it worse if we tried. Number 4, this whole medical marijuana issue. Now, you don't have medical marijuana, as I understand it, at least statewide in Missouri. We do in California. There are about 14 states that do. But it's In a lot of ways, it's a regulatory mess, mostly because cities like Los Angeles simply fell asleep, and they just kind of turned their backs and ignored the issue for 2 or 3 years, and then they finally paid attention again and were aghast that some people would take advantage of the system. Well, of course they will. It's up to them, and they dropped the ball. But at least now in California, when we pass Proposition 19, a lot of these problems with medical marijuana, for adults at least, will go away. Number 5, the whole hemp industry. How many of you even know what hemp is? Good. Good. A viable, huge industrial crop. And it will be, again, legalized. You'll be able to grow hemp just like you could cotton, something like that. And I could talk on this for an hour. How many of you would like to? Never mind, I won't ask. But suffice it to say that in ancient Greek, the word cannabis and canvas were the identical word. Old Ironsides, remember the USS Constitution? The sails on this ship were made from hemp. Now, you know, probably most of you don't remember gunny sacks, but they were made from hemp. It's a viable product. It's the stalk of the marijuana plant, a very fibrous plant. And you could get as much of a jolt from smoking hemp as you could the shirt on your back, I suppose. You know, there's nothing in it from that standpoint. Why we made hemp illegal is, of course, a baffling thing. But Congress, when you can go back and look at the congressional record, they had no concept of what marijuana was when they made it illegal, and they certainly didn't know that they were outlawing hemp, and they never would have done it. And I'm going to leave the subject only after saying one more thing, that you could get 4 times the amount of paper pulp from an acre of hemp as you could an acre of trees. It takes about a season of 8 to 9 months to grow the hemp and about 20 years to grow the trees. Now here in Missouri, you folks, your agricultural interests could really, really get rich in growing hemp, a viable product. I'm told, although I couldn't track it down, that the diesel engine was originally manufactured to run on oil from the hemp seeds. In fact, I was on a radio talk show from Iowa, 6, 7 months ago, I guess, and a farmer came on and said, you know, this is against my financial interests, because I grow corn, but hemp seed is better for ethanol than corn is because it won't clog your carburetor as much. So it's a viable crop. We import lots of hemp in our country today from those radical countries like Canada and England, for heaven's sake, and it's $1 billion a year business. We could revitalize this with regard to our agricultural interests as well as our markets. So those are 5 things that I think everyone would agree would be beneficial. Now there's the 6th. Let me ask you, education, economics majors. If you have a product, the demand remains the same. The cost is reduced by half, which, by the way, we would have to do in order to run the illegal dealers out of business, and it were no longer illegal. What would that do to marijuana usage? And the answer is, I acknowledge this openly, marijuana usage for adults would increase. I know, all things being equal. But all things are not going to be equal. First of all, after maybe 6, 12, maybe even 18 months, the novelty would wear off and things would start to stabilize. And again, we would probably start realizing the same Holland phenomenon we've talked about already. So, in addition, a lot of people today use stronger drugs instead of marijuana. Why? Because of drug prohibition. And they would probably come down the ladder and use their original drug of choice, which actually would be marijuana. How do I say that? What if you or a friend of yours had good reason to believe that you were going to be drug tested? But tonight is Friday, we're going to a party on Friday night, and I have pretty good reason to believe I'm not going to be drug tested, at least until maybe Monday or Tuesday. Message: if you go to that party, use cocaine, don't use marijuana. Use methamphetamines, don't use marijuana. Why? Because the methamphetamines and the cocaine will only stay in your system to be detected by drug analysis for about 72 hours, and after that it'll be out of your system. But the marijuana will stay in your system for what? For 30 days. So today, if you have any reason to believe you're drug tested, I don't know, you're on a football team, you're on parole, you're an airline pilot, whatever it might be, the message is there, and anybody that cares knows it. Use marijuana, don't use marijuana, use the harder drugs. That's a stupid message to send out. But a lot of these people would probably come down the ladder and start again using marijuana instead of the stronger drugs. All things being equal, I think we'd all agree that that would be a benefit. So I ask you, I think that this is going to be one of the most important elections in my lifetime. Everybody in this room knows someone who can vote in California. Please, contact them, encourage them strongly to vote for Proposition 19 in California. It will sweep the country. It will work. Regulate, control, yes, tax money is a nice side benefit, but it will make marijuana less available for children plus. I was in the juvenile court for quite a few years, and I would see the following scenario with some frequency. Ask yourself a question. If I'm an adult drug dealer, how much risk-taking can I buy for, say, $50 in cash from a 15, 16-year-old boy or girl in the inner city or anywhere else? And the answer is quite a bit. You know, $50 is nothing to an adult drug dealer, but it's a fair amount of money to a youngster, right? So as a result, I can recruit all of the 15, 16, 17-year-olds that I want, and I'll use them for lookouts or couriers or gophers, whatever. And then, I would see this in juvenile court all the time. As soon as the reliability of the youngsters is established, I will trust them to go out and sell small amounts of drugs in the communities. Why would I do such a despicable thing? And the answer to that is easy. It's a one-word answer, and the answer is money. More money for the kid, more money for me, right? Ask yourself this question. If you have a 15, 16, 17-year-old boy or girl selling drugs in his or her community, who are these people going to be selling to? People like me? No. They're going to be selling to their 14, 15, 16-year-old peers, thus recruiting more children to this very lifestyle of drug usage and drug selling that we're trying so hard to keep away from them, and it is being caused by our program.